Hi everybody! We are back with the first book, The Original Adventures of Hank the Cowdog. Today we're going to read chapter 9, Me Just a Worthless Coyote. That business about the secret was the perfect stroke, and it was probably what saved my life. In desperation, I lucked into it. Turns out that coyotes are suspicious animals. Even though they're known to be cunning and well, you know, whatever that word is, vigilant. I don't know how to say it very well, but you know what I mean. It doesn't take any brains to open up a dictionary and look up the word. Anyway, I can do that, and so can anybody. The real test of a writer comes in the creative process. I try to attend to the big picture, don't you see, and let the spelling take care of itself. Vigilant, still doesn't look right. Anyway, coyotes are superstitious brutes, and that deal about the secret caught them just at the right time and saved my hide. Actually, it did better than that. It made me kind of a celebrity in their tribe, and I was treated like the visiting dignitary, oh, who cares, by everyone but Scrunch, that is. And he continued to give me hateful glances and mutter under his breath, and every time our paths crossed, I couldn't blame him for being sore. I had won and he had lost, and you can't expect everyone to show me a good loser, and I'll show you a good loser, as we say in the security business. Scrunch had lost this big one, and I was confident that he would hate my guts forever, even though there was a good chance that I would eventually become his brother-in-law. You know, when Missy had first mentioned that possibility, it kind of struck me as a real good idea. I suppose at the time I was still thinking about going home back to Drover and Pete, you know, in the chickens, the sewer, the cowboys, my good old job. But a couple of days into the coyote village pretty much convinced me that I had found my true place in the world as a savage. The line of a savage ain't too bad. I admit that. I was raised with natural prejudices, bias against coyotes. Ma always told me that they were lazy, sneaky, undisciplined, and didn't have any ambition. But what chapped her most about coyotes was that they ate rotten meat, and it made them smell bad. True, every word of it. But what she didn't tell us was that they were lazy, riotous living can be a lot of fun. I don't blame her for not telling us that. I mean, she was trying to raise a litter of registered paper, blue ribbon, top-of-the-line cow dogs. And there's no better way to mess up a good cow dog than to let them discover that goofing off beats the heck out of hard work. I discovered it by accident, and once I had a taste of indolence, I loved it. I mean, all at once, I had no responsibilities, no cares, no worries. When I woke up in the morning, I didn't have to wander around the ranch if my ranch had made it through another night, or if I would get yelled at again for something that I hadn't done. About a week after I joined the tribe, I made friends with two brothers named Rip and Snort. They were what you would call the typical good old boy coyotes. Filthy, smelled awful, not real smart, loved to fight and have a good time, and no more ambition than a couple of fence posts. If Rip and Snort took a shine to you, you had the two of the best friends in the world. If they didn't happen to like you, you know, your looks or your attitude, you were in trouble. I got along with them just fine. One evening along toward sunset, they came around and asked if I wanted to go carousing. I was feeling refreshed since I had slept a good part of the day, got up around noon and ate a piece of rabbit that Missy had caught, and then went back to bed. I was all rested up and said, sure, I'd love to go carousing. So off we went, me and Rip and Snort, on a big adventure. We went down to the canyon, crossed the big sandy draw that cuts through there, then on across through rolling country until we came to an old silage pit. I'd been by it many times, but I had never taken the time to go into the pit and check it out. By the time I got over to the ranch, the cowboys had quit feeding silage, so I didn't know much about it. One of the things I didn't know about silage was that it was fermented, which means it got some alcohol in it, which means that if a guy eats enough of it, his attitude about the world begins to change. All at once, all those years I'd spent on the ranch, and I had never knew any of that. But Rip and Snort knew all about silage. Yes, they did, and they made it well-packed trail into it every night. So we started eating silage. Struck me as kind of bitter at first, but the more I ate it, the less I noticed the bitterness. By George, after about an hour of that stuff, I thought it was as sweet as honey. Well, we ate and we laughed and we laughed and we ate, and when it came time to leave, Rip and Snort had to drag me out of there, fellers, because I just couldn't get enough of that stuff. The big moon was out, and we went single file down the cow path. Snort in the lead, me in the middle, and Rip in the caboose. Funny thing that the path kept wiggling around, and I had a hard time trying to stay on it. I asked Rip about it, and he said he was having the same trouble. Dern path kept jumping from side to side. I suspect the silage had something to do with it. It's what I suspect. Well, next thing I knew, Snort topped the rise and came to a sudden halt, which caused a little pile-up, with me running into Snort and Rip running into me, because I couldn't say any of us real well at that point. "Stop here," said Snort. "Sing mini song, sing pretty song, sing loud, teach honk coyote song." So we all sat on our haunches, throwed our heads back, and started singing. Let's see if I can remember that song. Now, how'd it go? Me just a worthless coyote, me howling at the moon, me like to sing and holler, me crazy as a loon, me not want job or duties, no church or Sunday school, me just a worthless coyote, and I don't remember the last part, only it rhymed with something like school, maybe pool or drool or something like that. It was a crackerjack of a song. We ripped through it a couple of times until I had her down. Then we dived in. Snort took the bass, Rip carried the melody, and I got up on the high tenor. Don't know as I had ever heard better singing in my life. It was one of them priceless moments in life when the three very gifted guys come together, blend their talents, and sort of raise the culture standards of the whole world. I mean, it was good. We sang it 4 or 5 times, and then all at once Snort's ears perked up and he lifted his paw, and here's the picture. We stopped and listened, and off in the distance we heard yapping. There was something familiar about that yap. But for a few minutes, I couldn't place it. And then it occurred to me that while we were sitting on the spot just a quarter mile north of ranch headquarters, that yapping must be coming from Drover. I think Rip and Snort had taken a notion to amble on down there and see if they could get into a fight. I had to explain to them that couldn't run fast enough to get to Drover in a fight, that it would be a waste of time. "Let me go down and talk to him," I said. "He's an old buddy of mine. We used to work together. Maybe he'll come back and sing with us. We could use another guy or for a baritone." They shrugged. Snort sat down and started scratching his ear. "More fun fight, but singing okay, we wait." So I trotted down to the ranch, weaving a little from side to side and humming, "Me just a worthless coyote." Say, that was a good song. When I was 25 yards away, I stopped to a walk. I could see Drover ahead of me. He was looking off in the distance, a little dope. Didn't even see me. I decided to stop and watch him for a minute. He was all hunched up and tense, and off in the distance you could hear Rip and Snort laughing and belching and having a good old time. He'd cock his ear and listen for a minute, and then he'd dive out into a yip, yip, yip. On every yip, all 4 feet came off the ground. Then he'd stop and he'd listen. He never saw me, never had the slightest notion that I was sitting 10 yards away watching the whole show. This was my replacement, understanding the guy who had taken over my job of head of ranch security. I didn't need anyone to tell me that the ranch had gone completely and absolutely to pot. I cleared my throat. Drover froze. What was that? Who's there? What's going on, son? He gave out his usual, ah! And in a flash, he was hightailing it to the machine shed, squalling like a turpentine cat. He'd gone maybe 10, 12 yards when he slowed to a walk and stopped. Hank, is that you? Yep. It is? Uh-huh. How can I be sure? I thought you left the country. Well, why don't you just trot your little hiney over here and ask me? He came real close, a few steps at a time. It sure sounds like you. Son of a gun. You're not fooling me, are you, Hank? Get over here and quit messing around. Okay, I want to make sure that's all. He came creeping up to me. Hank! Boo! Ah! He screamed and jumped straight up into the air. Hank, stop that! Don't do that to me, my nerves! Drover, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What a pitiful excuse you are for a night watchman. I could have carried off half the chicken house and you never would have gotten the news. I know I'm a failure. Every morning I wake up and say, here's another day for Drover to mess up. And I do, every one of them. It hasn't been the same since you left, Hank. I knew it wouldn't. I tried to tell them, but they wouldn't listen. I mean, you can't treat a dog like a dog and expect him to come back. Gosh, I wish you would come back. You can forget that, son, because that'll never happen. I found a better life. He looked me over real careful. What's come over you, Hank? You look different, and you smell different. You stink. I've joined the Coyote tribe. No, that's right. And if you had brain in your head, you'd come along and join up with them too. It ain't a bad life, let me tell you. He took a couple of steps back. I can't believe it. What would your mother say? She'd say I was a turncoat and a traitor. So what? I tried the straight life. I did my job. And what did I get? Abuse. Ingratitude. No thanks. Life's too short for that. I'll cast my lot in the outlaws of the world. 3 weeks ago, he said in a quivery voice, you were on my side of the law and order trying to catch the murderers. Now you're one of them. That's right. Oh, Hank, I can't take it. I used to admire you so. You were my hero. I thought you were the greatest dog in the world. Since I was a pup, I just can't. I just wanted to be like you, brave and strong and fearless. Knock it off, Drover. I don't want to hear all that stuff. And dedicated to duty. I knew I could never be as good as you, but I wanted to try. You were my idol, Hank. Cut it out, will you? Come home, Hanky. I need you. The ranch needs you. We all need you. That kind of stuck me right here in the heart. Hearing Drover say those things, then Rip and Snort called for me. Honk! Come sing, we tired wait. Who's that? Drover asked. Oh, some of my pals. Come on up to the hill with me, Drover, and I'll show you a good time and introduce you to my friends. Are they drunk like you? There was a little edge in his voice. He had never talked to me like that before. Well, maybe they are and maybe they ain't. Who cares? I care. I don't associate with Coyote trash. Well, la-ti-da. Aren't we high and mighty tonight? Drover dried his eyes in with the back of his paw. I better get back to the ranch. I'm on guard tonight. You're on guard? Son, you're a sorry excuse for a guard dog running for the machine shed every time you hear a sound. I'm not gonna run no more, Hank. Somebody's gotta protect this ranch. We can't depend on you. You'll run. You always run. You always will. I ain't gonna run. Sure you will. I can prove it. Boo. He didn't run. That don't prove a thing. When time comes and the chips are down, you'll run and you'll hide. He looked me in the eye. No, I won't. And Hank, if you come with them, go with them, I won't run with you either. He turned and started walking away. You always were a little chump. I may be a chump, Hank, but I'm not a traitor. Goodbye. Go on, you little dummy. Who needs you anyway, sawed-off, stub-tailed, self-righteous little pipsqueak? Drover went on his way and I went on mine. On up the hill, I could hear the boys singing, "Me just a worthless coyote." Again, I took my place between Rip and Snort and started belting out high tenor. We went on like that all night long, singing and laughing and chasing mice, but it wasn't quite as fun this time. Okay, see you tomorrow. We're going to read about aged mutton. Have a good evening.